Yeah, thank you.
I think we can get started, John.
Okay, cool.
25 on the call. We are recording, everyone. Some of you will see some information in the chat window about both Boardroom Advisors and the Peer Space. So welcome to this Peer Space event. It's something like the 50th virtual event over the last year. Previously, the Peer Space was a dinner group in Sofia, Bulgaria, where I'm currently living. And effectively, the Peer Space is really all about gathering spaces where people can connect with each other. We run a lot of events where we do a mixture of sort of sharing time, one-to-one time, sometimes something creative. And this is actually the first fireside chat with John. Welcome to everyone watching from participating from the UK and perhaps mostly across South and East Europe, where we've been reaching out to. And welcome to John Courtney, of course, from Boardroom Advisors. So let's begin. John, I think it might be good just to start by telling us a bit about yourself, your story, and perhaps the story of Boardroom Advisors.
Okay. Well, let's listen. I'm a serial idiot now. This is business number 7, and I'm 109 in startup years. So let's start backwards. So Boardroom Advisors. So this is the current business, and very nicely we've got a couple of people, several people actually from Boardroom Advisors here today, which is nice. Thanks for showing up and supporting, guys. Listen, this isn't an advert, but I need to tell you roughly what Boardroom Advisors does, and that's we provide part-time directors to growing businesses, either non-exec directors or chairs, but actually the biggest piece for us is part-time executive directors, so marketing directors, operations, finance, sales, even managing directors. So often businesses, early stage businesses, perhaps that don't yet need, want, or perhaps can't afford a full-time sales, marketing, whatever director, or smaller businesses, family businesses, SMEs we call them in the UK, who perhaps, oh, somebody's got some background noise.
Guys, if everyone could mute, that'd be great.
Thanks, Niall. So family businesses that want to grow, and so on. So that's kind of what we do, and we've got 100 plus people, mainly in the UK, but now expanding overseas, and Niall is part of that overseas expansion. So we have a number of international directors. Niall in Bulgaria, and we have Ireland, Portugal, Spain. We're just starting in the States and in India, and we're looking for more international directors in order to help our global expansion. Oh, that's a bit of a mouthful, really, wasn't it, Niall?
That's good. Where did the idea come from? What was the original? How did it sort of build up?
Well, it started. The company is literally 5.5 years old now, and originally it was just me. I'd exited my previous business, which was a digital marketing agency, which I had with my wife, Kath, who's now our marketing director here. And we exited that, and like most people, I did nothing for a little while, played lots of cricket, which is great, but the body doesn't survive very much of that these days. So got a bit bored, really. Started to do a bit of consultancy work, started to work with some early stage businesses. I chaired a couple, did some consultancy work, some NED stuff, and so on. And that was great, and really enjoyed that. But I just wanted to do a bit more, really. I hate the word entrepreneur. I think it's just horrible. But it's that, whatever it is a bit of an affliction. You can't do anything at kind of half pace. You have to grow it worldwide for it to mean something. And my wife keeps asking me why, but that's kind of why. And because I enjoy it, really, because if you start businesses and run businesses, it's not about the money, it's about the creative process. And you want to create something out of nothing that people buy, whether that's services as we are now, or in the past I've had products, fertilizers, cricket bats, so it's, but you invent a product or a brand, and people buy that service or that product, and that's wow, I created this out of nothing.
Yeah, totally relate to that. What about? I was thinking the first question I wanted to ask you after the introduction is about the sort of the dynamics of boardrooms and the sort of vibe and how important chemistry is. I just wondered sort of what your insights are into that or experiences are of how important that is and how you might go about creating the right chemistry in a boardroom
Well,
or the right
absolutely.
vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's absolutely vital, because if you start from the basics, so boards are there, the boardroom, whatever size that is, even if it's a startup and it's, two people around a kitchen table, or it's, a big multinational and you've got 24, well, they don't have 24, but a dozen people around a fancy board table. The dynamic and the reason for being there is always the same, and that is to uh, agree the strategy and the direction of the business. That's the board's purpose. And in order to do that effectively and efficiently, then the people around that table, whether it's 2 or 12, have to be on the same page. They have to, they don't want to be clones of each other, quite the opposite, but they need to be able to have a rapport with each other, and to be able to discuss ideas and to get on with each other. We've all met people, I'm sure, that you kind of instantly don't get on with. No matter what you say, they always take account of you, or it's always awkward or whatever. Well, just imagine having those people around a ball table. It'd just be crazy, wouldn't it? Now, you don't necessarily want your best buddy there either. It's not about friendships, but it is about getting on. And one of the good things, so in the Boardroom Advisors own board, is my wife Kath. And one of the great things is Kath and I are very different. We are kind of chalk and cheese. Jack Spratt and his wife. We're very different, but actually we complement each other. So as well as having personal skills that get on, you need complementary business skills that can dovetail. And Kathy's great. I have lots of weaknesses, and Kath covers nearly all of those, which is brilliant. But in any business, there are always weaknesses, and you need people to be covering each other's weaknesses. You need all the bases covered. It's why one of the things that's really pleasing, when we're invited to perhaps be part of a client's board, and we'll put up 1 or 2 of our advisors, and the client will interview them, because they need to understand 2 basic things. One is, do they have the skills, and can they add to the piece, and can they cover some of the bases that aren't being covered at the moment? But fundamentally, can they get on with this person? If you can't do both of those things, then there's something seriously missing. So it is certainly about chemistry, but it's also about a skills mix, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. So part of the idea of this conversation was to talk a bit about the UK market, but also the new normal. So I was wondering, thinking about it from a UK and Europe perspective, and let's assume we're talking about the pandemic and Brexit, and how do you sort of see the main impacts of this new normal? How would you describe it on the impacts on businesses, senior decision makers? What sort of change would you say?
Well, listen, the pandemic's awful, and people have lost their lives, and people are sick. So you have to recognise that, and we all do, I'm sure. From a business point of view, it's done made lots of changes. This sort of thing is obvious. I do, I don't know, 7 or 8 Zooms a day. For us as Boardroom Advisors, it's really helped our business, because we are a virtual company anyway. We don't have a single office. We have over 100 people. We have no offices. Everybody always works from home. Although you know, in old school, you never said you work from home. It was always, you know, I work virtually, because that sounds a little more business-like, doesn't it? But actually, now we all know what that really means, because we've seen everybody's homes. You know, even government ministers, we see their homes, even though they prop the flag up in the background and have the red box open and all that sort of stage stuff. We still see into their houses, and we know they're human beings. But it's helped us as a business, partly because we're virtual anyway, but also because it's helped our international expansion. Because suddenly, you know, I can be in Bulgaria, I can be in New York, I can be in Istanbul, all within the hour. And to do that before would just be ridiculous, impossible. So and that's not going to go away. You know, it's like in Aladdin's cave. Somebody's opened that door, and we can see inside. So I'm sure the Zoom type world is going to be with us, but also offices, I think, will come back to a degree, and we'll end up with a hybrid model. And in fact, you know, from Boardroom Advisors, we've gone from completely face-to-face to completely Zoom because of lockdown. And we're planning for our own business to have a hybrid model. So we're talking to, for example, international director in the States, and at the moment he can use our 100 people that are sitting here by Zoom. But we're planning for him, together with him, that he will have some advisors on the ground, because 6 months' time, let's hope, some clients will want face-to-face meetings, and some clients will be happy with Zoom if that's the best advisor they can get. It'll be, I believe it'll be a hybrid model. So will it be entirely this? No. Will it be entirely what it used to be? I don't think so. I think it's going to be a mix. And fortunately, thank God, you know, we're all going to be spending a lot less time traveling. You know, how many hours and days have we all wasted of our lives traveling on motorways, going to see clients or customers or whatever it is. And sure, some of that's going to happen, but so much less. And isn't that just wonderful?
For sure, and better for the planet, of course.
Yeah, and the commute to the office. You know, perhaps people will go into their offices once a week for team meetings. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But rather than every single day traveling an hour into to their office, you know, suddenly that time's freed up. And okay, you know, of course it's crazy. We're all a bit stir crazy, aren't we, at the moment? Because we can't, you know, in England we're locked down. We can't get out. You know, one of my sons lives very close, and I can't get out and see him. It's, you know, it's horrible, but there are lots of benefits. I'm sure, and some of those will stick with us.
Sure. So just want to turn a little bit to sort of actually the work of Boardroom Advice, or the work of the Boardroom Advisor. And when you do have a good Boardroom Advisor on your board, I just wondered sort of how would you sum up the real impact they can make? What's the real difference they can make? Maybe if you have some examples, and why now especially, you know?
Yeah. Well, it depends what sort of advisor they are. So we provide chairman, for example. Now, chairman's role is very different. So a chairman is there to chair the meeting, obviously. It's there in the title, but that's actually quite a bit more than that. They're often a mentor to the chief exec. They're often, you know, working behind the scenes to pre-plan some of the board and to get some of the people on side, and, you know, pre-agree some things that are going to come up at the board meeting. Depends on the size of the company, obviously. So, but a chairman's role is very, very different, and it's quite fundamental to a company. And, you know, smaller companies, I know, you know, when my previous businesses, with hindsight, I should have had a chair, because it's very easy if you're founder and chief exec. It's very easy to have a one-eyed view. It's you know, well, it's a one-eyed view. The chairman can give you perhaps the bigger picture. German and a non-exec, where they both share something, is that they're both external and objective. And so they're not day to day in the business. So, when the CEO's head is plowing on a particular furrow, and a chair or a non-exec can say, well, that's really interesting, but actually, what about X and what about Y? And it's like, oh, crikey, yes. I hadn't even thought about that. The external view is absolutely essential from the non-exec director or from the chair. If it's executive director who we've put around the board, well, that's different because they are in the business. They're just not there every day of the week. So they are, they are perhaps, well, they are subjective rather than objective because they're in the business. Perhaps not every day. So they have kind of different roles really, but having the blend of the board and having a balance of a board is so essential.
Cool. Okay. And I've reached out across South and East Europe for people to join this call. So with guys out in Europe on the call, with ambitions maybe to work with or through the UK to reach out to the world potentially, I just wanted to ask you a bit about your thoughts on the UK market, its many nuances, its unique nature, how business is done there, perhaps that may be different from how it may be in other places, and how important it is to be sort of tuned in maybe to sort of specific niches and that kind of thing, just to get a bit of an insight into your take on the UK market for companies outside the UK.
Well, listen, this is 7 businesses I've had all in the UK, so forgive me if I've got a subjective view. Oh, I've also got a frog in my throat. Been speaking too much. Excuse me.
No worries.
I think the UK is a great place to start a business and to run a business. The tax regime here is wonderful. The scale-up community, the mentors, the incubators and accelerators. You don't know quite where to start. There is so much now. And, if I look back to the first business I started 40 or something years ago, in the UK, we had none of that support structure. Support structure here is fabulous. Now, I know you've got some of that in Eastern Europe as well, but we've got it in spades in the UK. And listen, I'm not an ambassador for the UK, but I think it is a great regime. And perhaps people outside worry that Brexit is going to change things or make it more difficult. Actually, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for people to come to the UK and to set up here or expand here or whatever, because the UK is now throwing its doors wide open. It wants to do business even more with people from different countries. The tax regime will change and will probably change for the better. The red tape will probably change for the better. Not that there's much here anyway, but there was some European red tape which will be slowly dismantled. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I think, are we going to end up being another Singapore with a very low tax regime? I'm not so sure we're going to go that far, but that's kind of the direction of travel. If some doors are closing, then the UK wants to open other doors, and I think it's a great opportunity for people.
Great, yeah, cool. Okay, and actually, my final main question was about, obviously it's a time of elevated fear, uncertainty, many unknowns, not least considering the capabilities of your network. How do we sort of collectively and individually as businesses, professionals, how do we sort of navigate it all from your point of view? What's your sort of advice for senior decision makers or business people who are trying to navigate this sort of fog, if you like?
Well, get a jab as soon as you can. That will be my first suggestion. I'm 109, as I said, so I've seen a few crises, maybe not one like this before, but financial crashes and so on. And after every crash, every crisis, you get a big bounce back. You know, where the Roaring '20s were roaring because of the First World War, and everything closed down, and munition factories and all this sort of stuff. And then suddenly people got released, and there was, you know, lots of changes there, wasn't there? One of them was growth in business, and, you know, roared ahead, business roared ahead. People off changed their attitudes as well, and kind of appreciated their freedom a lot more. And same happened after the Second World War. A lot of attitudes, personal attitudes changed, but business roared ahead. And, you know, I'm absolutely certain. Well, the anecdotal evidence is from places like Singapore, that aren't locked down, that have come out of their lockdown. Their business is roaring ahead like nobody's business. I'm sure it's going to happen here as well, provided that the jabs do get us out of the crisis that we're in, which I'm pretty confident. And I think it's going to be a wonderful opportunity. You know, they were saying also in the crisis that lots of new businesses start in a crisis, and start in recession times, because things change. You know, whenever anything isn't the norm, wherever the mold gets broken, you know, for entrepreneurs, that's a wonderful opportunity to do things differently, to remake things, to be the disruptor, you know. And if people's personal attitudes to life are going to change, have perhaps already changed, that creates other opportunities for people. So I'm, you know, lots of negatives, obviously, but from a business point of view, I think it's going to be, as soon as this crisis is over, I think it's going to be the roaring '20s, or yeah, the second version of the Roaring '20s.
Yeah, brilliant. So before we open up to any questions from anyone, John, if anyone wants to find out more about Boardroom Advisors, what would you suggest that they do?
Oh, that's easy. Probably just go to the website, boardroomadvisors.co. I think you kindly put that on the chat somewhere, didn't you?
I'll put a link again in the chat there again.
That's kind.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. So I'd like to open it up now. We've got officially about another 15, 17 minutes. So happy to take any questions, spoken or written. I haven't got anything written in the chat, so I'm just going to go to gallery view. Does anyone have any questions for John? If you do a hand raise or a...
Helen.
Yeah, Helen, go for it.
Yeah, hi, everybody. So I've sat on boards probably for the last 10 years, running alongside my current company that I just exited, thank goodness. And I say that with a smile on my face. Would you advise people to have a specific CV set up just for board positions and highlight what they've done? Because obviously a CV for general sort of work is going to be very different, I feel, for boardroom positions.
Yes, very much, Helen. And yeah, winding the clock back, I did exactly that. If I was going for an executive position, they would get that CV number 1. If I was going for a board position, it would be CV number 2. You're absolutely right. If people are looking for a board member, what's the question in their head? It's what does this person bring to a board? And so, you know, going back to the earlier part of the conversation, it's how can you be external and objective? What are the skills that you bring? How might they marry with other people? How do you work with other people in a board environment? All of those types of things, I think are very important. And I think if you just whack out a normal CV hoping to get a board position, I think you're much less likely to get a result. Does that marry with your own view?
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I've got my, you know, if I was to put one together, I'd have sort of the history of my recruitment world and my company, but I'm looking at working on at the moment, funnily enough. And maybe another question is something that the Boardroom Advisors, do you help directors looking to get into that sort of level have a sort of a CV format? Does your company advise on that?
Not we don't have a process to do that, but one of the things that we do obviously is we talk to our people very much about also their LinkedIn profile, because Anybody worth their salt is going to research, and where are they going to do most of their research? It's going to be on LinkedIn. So having a professionally laid out LinkedIn profile, and if you're going for board positions, again, having it in that format, and you're focusing on certain areas and not on other areas. It's a second CV, isn't it? So
Yeah.
very, very, very important. Thanks. Yeah. Good question, Helen.
Excellent. I do have one more, but I don't want to hog the time.
Crack on while you're here.
Go for it.
Okay, so this is my background's in psychology. I did a psychology and business degree, and I'm still fascinated by the types when companies don't use like psychometric testing or some sort of like psychology aspect to bring in especially people in on the board. And I just wonder if that's the sort of thing that you would look at, whether you do, because you're saying earlier about personalities, and some of the hardest when I've been chairing positions, and I love chairing and I love being part of a board, but yes, there are times when certain personalities just don't fit the alignment of the company.
Yeah, we don't do it ourselves, but we recommend that our clients do it, particularly the larger ones. The smaller ones perhaps can't afford those external services, but you can do them at a very simple level. You can do, disc profiling is you can DIY disc profiling, which is really just a kind of a much smaller version of some of the more professional things. But that makes that knowing what somebody's profile is, I think, is very important. And in disc profiling, I think if you're a D and a red, you're going to be a certain type of go-getter, a more A-type personality, I think, if memory serves. And if you know that that's the type of person that you're getting on your board, that can be good or bad, maybe exactly what you need, particularly maybe for a sales director, but it may not fit with, if you've got other type A's around the table, and bringing another type A could be a potential disaster. So, and it's something in my previous business, or in the digital marketing agency, we did disc profiling, and particularly when we took on trainees, we hired by personality more than by what subject they'd studied at university, because we were going to train them some skills. We just had to make sure they had the level of intelligence, and that their profile, it would fit in with the others that, where we'd see them going. So I think that's very important. Difficult for the smaller companies to do, but again, I would recommend just look up DISC, and you can do your own DISC mini profile without much cost, I think. Sorry.
I'll say I'm a big fan as well of this profiling. Any other questions from anyone? If you raise a hand or nothing about board. Yeah, Adrian, I've got one. I've got at least one more. Adrian, go for it.
I'm interested to hear, John, that you mentioned disc profiling, because I've just been looking at what I would think is perhaps a slightly more sophisticated version of that, called the GC index. GC standing for Game Changer. And I wondered if anybody else had come across that, and whether they had positive or negative reactions to it, as I'm wondering about becoming an accredited tester and an agent for it.
Interesting. I haven't heard of it, but Helen's nodding her head. She's the specialist in this area, obviously.
Yeah. So I've actually used it myself on myself, because I wanted to see what I came out as, and it was so accurate. Like, I love anything of personality testing anyway. I haven't used it for a client because they can become quite expensive, and I don't know how to analyze it myself, but certainly I have heard very good things, Adrian, I must admit, 100%.
So if I do become an agent, we need to have another conversation.
You probably do, yes.
Interesting. There's also similar to that, and this isn't my special subject by any means, but there's a company called Crystal, which merges with LinkedIn. And if you sign up to the Crystal program, I'm not connected with them at all, then it will tell you the profile of people that you're connecting with on LinkedIn. And it will also tell you in which case, therefore, this is the best way of communicating with them. So you want to use short, sharp sentences, or you want to describe things, or you want to paint a picture or whatever. Crystal Nose, I think it's called, or Crystal, something around that. Quite fascinating. I think it's quite expensive, but if you're a fan of, if you use LinkedIn a lot, it's a good knowledge tool.
John, we've got another question from the group, from Georgi. Georgi, do you want to say it?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, guys. My name is Georgi, based here in Bulgaria, running a boutique software development company. My question, John, is like, does Boardroom Advisors help with UK expansion, let's say? It kind of can connect us with different people, different organizations. Do you advise mostly internally or externally as well? So how the whole engagement could eventually work? Because me personally, I'm interested in kind of getting more business within the UK rather than have somebody kind of looking into the company internally.
Yeah, we do both, and we certainly help companies coming into the UK, because obviously we have a lot of our advisors here, and have set up and run businesses here, and we know the wrinkles of the market. The UK is a very mature market, and it means that there are certain ways of doing things over here that it helps to know. Although a lot of the barriers have been broken down, there is still quite a bit of it's who you know as well as what you know. So opening up doors to the right connections is very important. So we've helped quite a few companies enter the UK market, and in fact pre-entry we've helped them with research into the marketplace and helping them put their plans together before they actually make that step to come over. So we've done that. And then we've often helped them once they've got here to expand in the marketplace, and perhaps supply other people around the board table or whatever the need is. And we've also done the reverse. In the UK, we help people export. We have quite a lot of people who have international experience in other countries. For us, it's always about trying to find out what the client's underlying need is. Is it for, perhaps in your case, entry into the UK, somebody else for export outside, for a third it might be for exiting their company, for another it's developing their strategy in a certain area. So there's underlying needs for a client. So the trick is just to find out what that underlying need is, and then see if we have the right person or persons who can help with that need. And we can't always, but now we've got 100+ people, and they've all been around a few blocks like me. We can cover most bases, and we had somebody ask us the other week to help them start blueberry farming in Estonia, and we had 2 advisors plus myself, so 3 who had relevant experience with that. So I kind of figure if we can do that, we can help with most. So certainly coming from Bulgaria into the UK, that's, yes, certainly happy to help. By all means, have a chat with me directly, or probably actually, if you're in Bulgaria, have a chat with Niall, and we can take that offline.
Cool. I've got at least one more question. Does anyone else have something? John, I was thinking about major do's and don'ts, or any anecdotes of particularly good and bad experiences. Like when you're forming a board, is there one particular thing that's a success factor? Things that are big things not to do. Do you have any sort of thoughts on that?
Well, yes, I suppose having regular meetings is essential. Boardroom Advisors, we have monthly meetings, regional directors board meetings, and we have one at 2 o'clock today. But they're in the diary, regular as clockwork. Everybody knows where they are. So if there's actions hanging over from one meeting coming to the next, then you know what the timescale is for that. So doing things regularly, I think is absolutely essential. In terms of don'ts, well, yes, I think I would say what's the objective of a board meeting? It's to look at the strategy and direction of the company. It's not necessarily to dig down into the detail of some of the day-to-day things. In most companies, that should be, at management level, and that's for weekly management meetings, perhaps. But board meetings are there for the strategy and direction of the company, and it's just worth remembering that and sticking to that as what you achieve. Otherwise, they become the same as the management meetings, and then you start to think, well, what's the point? Because I'm going to talk about it on Monday at our weekly management meeting as well. You've got to separate the two, strategy and tactics, and the two things are very different.
Got it. Helen, did you want to come in on something?
Yeah, I was just going to agree with John there. I think that the biggest thing for me, the don'ts, having been on boards for many, many years, is people that do it because they just want the grand title. They don't actually have an interest in the organisation, the charity, or whatever it is that they're working with, and they don't read the information. And it's just, it's a waste of their time, and it's also it's a waste of the rest of the board's time. And you can see pretty quickly somebody that's just using it as a, I don't know, on their LinkedIn profile or on their CV, which is a real shame, actually. So I think people really have to go into board positions knowing that there is work doing behind the scenes. It's not just a case of having a coffee or a chat around a board table. Would you agree, John?
Sure.
Yes, I would. And also from the other side, I would say, when companies are looking at taking somebody on their board, don't be too flattered by, their huge CV and list of titles and, they're in IBM this and Microsoft that, and sometimes the big stuff, if you're perhaps a smaller business, the big stuff it can be too grand. You've got to be realistic about the size of business you have, the needs of your business, and what type of person, what type of candidate, what type of skills are going to actually help that business move forward. So not to be flattered by some of the big company stuff if you're a kitchen table startup business.
Sure. We've got one more question, I think, John, from it's probably the last question in the time we've got. Alistair, did you want to put that question?
Sure, thanks, Niall. John, hi. Can I ask, if appropriate, what's your view on diversity and inclusion in UK boards?
Well, yes, obviously there isn't enough. Alistair, I'm a great believer that you take the right person, and you try not to look at color, you try not to look at sex, you try not to look at anything else, age. You always try and take the right person. But if you look at the UK as a whole, where the boards aren't terribly diverse, there aren't enough women, there aren't enough people of color. That's a fact. How to do it without, without going overboard, without being prejudiced the wrong way. I don't have terribly many answers, but certainly, to have a diverse board has to be right. If you look at, you can't stereotype people either. You can't say, well, women are great to have on the board. No, is that person the right person to have on the board? Are they the right personality? Do they have the right skills? But as an overview, yes, of course, the more we can do. Have you got any wonderful magic wand, Alistair, as to how we can do that?
I'm in the same camp as you, John, which is I'm still looking for that wand, but I think it's a very topical conversation. I'm a big believer of it's skill that should drive the choice, combined with fit. I was chatting to a professional service contact of mine recently who runs a big accounting business in the West Midlands, and they have specifically asked not to see any location or name on any CVs for anybody that they look at taking on, so that they go at it with a completely clean page.
That's nice, isn't it? Yeah, I quite like that. And listen, you know, on my own regional directors board, we have several women. They contribute strongly. You know, it's. I think that's a really clever way of doing it. I mean, I think the world has changed. You know, if you look at the UK market a few years ago, there was definitely a bias against women. You know, that perhaps the board wasn't the right place for women to be. What's a ridiculous mindset, but you know, that existed, and that doesn't exist now, generally speaking. So the world has changed. Should there be positive discrimination? How should that be? I think not having names or you know, making them as neutral as possible, so people are choosing without even being aware of such issues, is probably a really good idea. I don't know. Has anybody else got any suggestions as to how that can? Helen?
Yeah, no, it's funny. This will probably link in with the event that I've just seen put up on the chat for about AI next Tuesday that Niall's put on. But
Monday.
Monday. I'm on my days. Monday after Valentine's. But no, there's a company that I'm in talks with at the moment that are setting up basically completely non-biased interview questions. And one of those things that I think, as Alistair was saying, you know, about taking off, it's like a complete anonymity. And I think that is the way that a lot of businesses will be going down now, because they can't afford to be seen in any way, shape nor form, especially when they're doing mass interviews for, say, call centre staff or, say, Capita. You know, for example, when they're looking to recruit, you know, everyone has to be really careful. So I think that is going to be a way that a lot of businesses will go down the AI route, which is one of them, but also they say that the anonymity and the non-biased selection, without question.
And I think, just going back to the points we made earlier, that from a practical point of view, never mind how we should be seen, which is a fair point, but also the reality, you know, what's a good board? A good board is diverse in its culture, in its thinking, in everything that you do. You know, having all those bases covered around the board table is part of diverse. So how can it be the wrong thing to do? It has to be the right thing to do. So fascinating.
Great. So John, thanks very much for your time today, and thanks everyone else for coming along. We've just gone slightly over the time, so it's a very good sign. If you did want to receive the follow-up to this, we can send the video on to you and the chat information. You can just leave your email in the chat or just message me your emails, and by all means follow the peer space for other events like this. John, from your side, any last word in terms of just to sign off?
No, just thank you. Thanks everybody for turning up and listening to me rabbit on. And more than happy to help. Do contact me by email or via the website or whatever if you want to talk about anything. And thanks very much.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, see you again.
Cheers.
Thank you.